Hello and welcome back to another episode here at Scriptcase by Jamie. In this video, we are going to carry on with the integration of the Maileroo system into our project. Well, what project? We don't actually have a project yet. So let's create one. Okay, so now that we are looking once again at our Scriptcase applications that we had just put together within the previous video, we can maybe go ahead and close those. Now, I said before that I wanted to just generate the security, but I figured maybe, we could maybe just create a few more applications in here as well. Okay, so I'm going to not express edit. I actually want the batch applications, because with the batch applications in Scriptcase, I can generate specific applications, or all of them, in a matter of seconds. Okay, so I have here already the security tables there, as you see, as well as a webhook sessions table and some tables for clients and companies and email logs and so forth, orders and portal settings. So this is just a sample database that I have here. So if I go ahead maybe and choose here the clients and companies table, and I want a form as well as a grid for those. Now, I should note, when you actually generate a grid in Scriptcase, you also have the option to create the form that goes with that grid at the same time. And of course, generating the grid like this, or in that fashion, then you would already create the linkages between those two applications, which can provide some advantages. Of course, in many cases, you will not want to keep them. So I will choose to open them to edit and click finish. Okay, so I'm not going to bother generating the source code yet. I'm going to edit the applications now, and then after that we can then go ahead and generate each of the applications. So I'm just going to fly through them very quickly and just maybe make some quick adjustments to how they look. So we have here the default companies grid and the sample data that I have in here, and that looks like so. Okay, so we have with this default grid already a details view and the edit, and of course I need to generate that form first, so that's why it's not there right now, and I cannot go back. I need to run the application again to access the grid. So to click the add button or edit right now, I need to generate the applications first, and I have not done that. Okay, so I have here the company ID, the date, owner, company name, address, company area, but for sure, we have some extra fields here. So we have here the country, VAT number, email address, support, and so forth. So just straight away, I'm going to make a couple adjustments here to our fields, and straight away we'll have those options. Now, typically the country would then be the short abbreviated version, and for a form, well, that would then be a select. For the grid, we can just leave it as text. We won't want the address in there, name, company area. I don't really care about that either for this application. Let's have the company VAT number and the active status that we have here. Let's add that there also, and I will remove the ID and the add date. I will move that to the end. I will add here the line breaks and change here the direction or alignment, should I say, of the date, and click run. And then just like that, I have very quickly made a few adjustments here to our grid. I have relevant data that I want to see for this application. And of course, I want to make some further adjustments. So first of all, I want to remove some of these modules. So for our grid, as we have here, we have a search. We have also all these columns and sorting and export features and everything else. And maybe I don't want them. And I definitely do not want the detail. So the summary is there. We don't really need that, or the chart, or the search here. So I'm going to remove all of those, and straight away now if I run the application, it is going to make a slight difference because it removes then the search functionality, the columns and sorting and everything. We will remove those here within the toolbar. And here I will just choose to remove all of these options here, as well as then also the search, the save, the summary, and just leave the form buttons and exit, as well as then the navigation buttons at the bottom. So even here, I can of course remove some of these options. So if I remove, say, the rows limit or the jump to, let's get rid of that, and the rows counter, we again already have a slightly different view for our grid. I don't like those gaps there that are always in the grid. I will set the vertical alignment here to top, and that will then just remove these gaps here for this grid application. Okay, so of course, in some cases you may want to have it. It really depends on what you are actually going to use that grid application for. Because I don't know if you know, but this grid is super powerful. You have so many view options. It's crazy. And you can remove the fields. Anyway, that's another topic, of course. Okay, so with our grid ready, let's jump into our client grid here. Let's go ahead and do the same thing here as well. We're just left with our grid module, access these settings, set the vertical alignment to top, and then maybe adjust here some of our fields. Now, if I have many fields, then maybe it's better here to use the field positioning. And from here, I can then just choose specific fields that I want to then maybe remove or add in there or whatever it is I want to do. Okay, so just like that, I can then run the grid application again. And ideally, we want a similar layout as the previous grid. So let's place our dates here at the end and run that again. And then, of course, here we want to also remove some of these buttons that we have here. So again, not the action bar, but the toolbar. And then here, I will go ahead and remove all of those icons and buttons and features that are there by default that I'm not actually wanting for this application. So again, I'll go run. And of course, I could remove here the jump to again and counter. And that way we have the same sort of grid as the other grid. Now, to make other adjustments here, let's just very quickly also add in here the header and footer. Let's leave the date. Sometimes it's good. List of clients. And of course, we can do the same here for our grid companies once the clients here is loaded. Yeah, so there we have a list of clients, the date over there, and for our grid companies, we can add that then also here in our header. Okay, so very quick and easy, nothing special, of course. And then we have here, of course, our forms. So let's just run the form very quickly, our form companies. And then here we have our default form. Okay, so we want to very quickly just make some adjustments here so it maybe looks a little bit better. So our settings, again, we have the vertical alignment here as well. I'll set the input width to 100 and then straight away adjust our fields. Now I can adjust various other options as well. Some of those maybe we'll check in a few moments. And here I'm just going to drag out the fields that we're not wanting within this form. So I will just remove some of these and set some of them as they are. So we have email, country, as a select list, zip file, area, address, name, and the owner, well, that would be then the user that inserts. So we can add that one later on. And then here we have our logo and also our active status, which is an integer. And there I will choose a checkbox. Okay, so I'll save that. I'll move the active to top because I like that at the top there. Our logo here, what that is, of course, an image. Now we can decide if we want to have that image stored in the database or on our server. Now, which is better, you may be wondering. Okay, so it really depends on those images. You do not want big fat images of company logos that maybe take 2-3 meg, various sizes, and you want to place them in your database. Not really. You want to then format those images. So in this case, I'm going to just go image file name. Okay, and with that, I will then be storing those files on the server. And then here within our fields, I can then just very quickly jump into each of them because they're all pre-configured now. And now all I need to do is specify those settings. So here I will create a subfolder. And here I want that folder to be called companies and / and then I want to add the company ID. Okay, and that is then company _ ID. All right, there we go. So company underscore ID. And that will then also be within its own folder. So it will then create images or create a directory with the ID of the company, and it will place it inside of that folder. Now, what I need to do then, of course, is within the grid companies, is make sure that field here also indicates that same directory. So here I have it as logo. So I'm going to drag that one up. I'm going to change that then here to image file name, save that. And then with that, I can now access that field here within the fields menu, because the hidden ones, they're not displayed. Okay, so yeah, don't waste your time. Just drag it into view and then make those adjustments. So here I will then add that subdirectory in here. So at any point I can come in here, I can display then that image if I wanted to within the grid, and it will be correct straight away. And at the same time, if I enable then columns and so forth, again, the image will be functional and available straight away for the end user. And of course, that's really what you want, right? Okay, so let's finish that then with the grid company. So that's all done there. I think, yeah, we set the logo, we set the date, time, these, well, that's all set in the form. So we're back in the form here now. So we have our logo set up with the correct path. We are going to display here the clickable upload area, because nice, easy, drag and drop that file, right? And save that form. I can then also specify some restrictions for this logo. So I can say here, extensions and upload size. I can then say, I only want JPEGs, you know, because JPEGs are usually nicely compressed. And then maybe I can say a maximum of 500K, which is a massive image already. And at the same time, add those capital JPEGs in there as well, just to make sure that anybody with a lowercase or uppercase image does not have any upload issues. And of course, then somebody's bugging you to say, hey, it's not working. Okay, so with that, we have our logo set. Let's set then also the company country. And as we had that select, the data type select, and then we have that here within the manual. And within the manual, we have here some lookup definitions. You will have countries there available. And just with that, it enters all of the countries in a nice select list for me. And here I can even use a title. So that will basically set that as a blank field, not adding a false country maybe to a wrong company. It wouldn't be good, would it? Okay, so there we already have an error, call to undefined method form companies. Okay, and we haven't even done anything here, have we? We actually just done this select here and it did not like it. So let's try and run that again. Okay, because that seems to be a bug now. So it doesn't like here the company ID, but I didn't add company ID here anyway. So let's come back to automatic. There's nothing there. I'm going to save that anyway. Let's run that again. Let's see if we get this error message again. No, it has to have the error. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and then create a new application. Now, I did not expect that to happen, and I don't want to be troubleshooting it right now either, because of course I'm creating this video for you guys. So, okay. So form companies, let me then just call it new. I will create that. And I guess you'll be lucky enough for me to show you how to link the applications again. So let me go run here again. Now. Okay, so there we have our error actually here on the image file name. And it is not liking here the company ID. So let us check here that we're using the right ID. ID companies. There you go. And that would explain it, of course. Okay, so logo. And come here, ID companies. There we go. And that's why we had that error. See, Scriptcase was telling me that, yeah, it's not liking that there. So, of course, we just create a new form. Troubleshoot, start again. No big deal most of the time, because you should be doing it step by step anyway, ideally. Okay, so I can actually delete this application and come back here to the form companies. Come back here to the logo, and then here I'm going to change this to ID companies. Okay, and I need to update that then also here within our grid application and make sure that is correct. Okay, so here we go. ID companies, ID grid can close, grid can close. We are on the form. Let's come back here to run We'll come back to the forms, the grids shortly, don't worry. And now with our form, we have our active status. We need to set that here as a checkbox, and that is also manual and single value. Now it is an integer field, so I'll say yes, active, and 1 and 0, and set that, insert, save that, and there we have then our next field done and dusted. So we have our company countries, we have our active status here, and we have here the nice checkbox. And of course, I can check this other use switch button here, and it'll make that checkbox just look a little nicer. Okay, so we have then our company address. Now, I'm really not a big fan of the way some of these forms turn out, but we can always make adjustments. So I'm going to change a few things here. We have the company address. That is multiple lines. So let's add multiple lines in there, and that will actually make that a little nicer. And here for our blocks, I'm then going to set our label position to above, and that will then maybe look a little nice, especially when you then go to use this form on a modal application. Looking at it now, maybe you will want to add some more blocks, and yeah, let's actually do that. Let's place that logo on the right there. It will look much better, the form. Okay, so block 0, you can give the block any name you want. It doesn't matter. I just like to give them block 0, block, and number them so I know. So the label position I want above, but I'm not going to display it for this field, for this section, and I will say 40% and 60%, and the next one here will be beside, and that will then place the new block next to it side by side and give it a 40%, 60% space. Okay, so I'll save that, come back here to edit fields or in field positioning, wherever you like, and I'll just drag here the logo or place the logo here into that new block, run the form, and there we then have a much better looking form already. There you go, look at that. Now we have our logo here that we can then upload, and we have our form information here. Now, of course, you could change this a little more, because personally I like to actually add another bar at the top here, have the active status maybe there, and maybe any other information that's required, you know, just on the view. But for a basic form, that's awesome. Okay, so we can make further adjustments here. So one thing I really like to do myself is I hate to leave these default names, because of course, add a company. That's what we want to do. Add a new company. Add a new company, or create a company. There we go. That one's better. And there we go. We're going to have then create a company, save, delete. I think that's fine. Okay, so with our first form ready, let's jump then here to our form clients. We have then here our edit fields. And again, we can just do the same thing again. I'm just going to drag and drop them very quickly. Again here, our email. We have our image for our photo here in the database. You know, that is entirely by choice. Maybe that's how the database is configured. We should maybe go ahead and check that database. Okay, so here with our grids, our database tables, we have here our grid, our table companies. And we have here the structure, so we can see here the ID for this is ID companies here. It is an integer, of course. Our active status is also an integer. Then the clients table, and see what we have here for our photo. So the photo is in fact a blob field. And of course, as you should know, Scriptcase identifies that, and that is why we have here now image database. Okay, because Scriptcase has seen the database, just like it did before in the error that I showed you. Yeah, I know we have our Maileroo topic today, but we're getting there. All of this is just process, right? It's just things you're going to go through. So with our form pretty much ready, we can now take our Maileroo and add our notifications to these applications. Of course, I want to maybe make these look just as nice as our other applications, right? So here, we'll just leave the titles on these. You can, of course, add the language variables, and that's what these here are. If you're not sure, those are language variables which are then used or applied here within the application language. Okay, because the data dictionary and application language, they work together, and with the data dictionary, it manages the data of your database, okay, and then applies that to the application languages. and so forth. It's awesome. Okay, worth checking out. Do check it out. Okay, so with our form here, say what I wanted to do here was actually change the layout here, move that to above, and of course we can change, add extra columns in there and everything else. I'm just going to do that for now. Move that to above. I want to set the active status though, because it's always good to have our active there. So I will drag that again to the top here, save that. And again, maybe change that here to a checkbox, which I should have done just now. Come here to then our active field. And then again, choose here manual, single value, enter. Wait for the refresh. Yes, 1 and 0. Insert that. Click our use switch up here, run, and there we go. And just like that, we have once again, made a form look awesome. In fact, we want those 100% widths. We did not choose that. So check that box, run the application again. And just like that, well, we have our form pretty much ready. Of course, again, we would maybe want to go and change here the title and so forth. I don't want to bore you with that again. We just did that. So let's now take our forms that we have here. And the first thing I want to do is actually generate them. Okay, so that everything is updated, that when we work with it and we view them and so forth, that nothing else is broken. So of course I could then come back here to my home, launch then my grid clients here and add a new application. Awesome. Cancel that, edit the ones I have. Awesome. And of course we can further customize the layouts of those. What we really want to do now is take our transaction test here and our validate test, and we want to integrate these into our two applications here. So for instance, in our form clients, we have here the client email, and we have a validation test here. We have here Ajax events that we can then apply to our fields, which is awesome. I love this feature. So here I can say, for instance, my active status. If it's clicked, I'm going to display a message. Okay, so with that, I want to take here actually my email field, my client email. We could do the active status maybe as well, and maybe add a notice there, but we're going to add it here anyway on these. So on our client email, I'm going to say on change because it's a text field. It's going to be changed. If you do it on click, it does work on click, but then, it's not going to update when they change the data. So don't use on click. Okay. So on change of our client email field. So I'll just take here our client email field, make sure we know what we're talking about. That is what we want to test. So I'm going to come here to my blank test here. I'm going to copy this, come here to my form clients, and I have here my client email. And if I come underneath this, I can paste that there, take here my client email, and I'm going to replace my email field there with that. So let me get rid of that. And now if I go run, we then have an Ajax with our client email. Okay, so if I then come here, go to home, come out of here, that should then update for us. But of course, it's not displaying anything because it's just echoing here the error, and there is no error. So there is actually a message that we want to display here. And this is not going to just echo our response here in the form. At the same time, really, ideally for testing, we want to come down here, go to application, go to settings, and then we want to enable debug. We also want to enable script error. Okay, we're testing now. We want to see if this is working. Don't just leave it as the form. You're not going to see nothing. Okay, so there, if I come here, I see then the insert and everything else. And if I click on here, I will then also have here some updates. And if I go at home, so that has been changed, processing. And then we have here our success true error code. And it says the email format is valid, MX is found, true, it is disposable, and yes, so the email actually exists. Awesome. Okay, so with that, we can then go ahead and, of course, validate our email addresses. And like you see, that was pretty straightforward, right? Taking that from our blank application and then placing it into our form. it's pretty lame as well, okay? It's awesome, but at the same time, it's pretty lame because we don't want this in here. We want to take that out of here, and then really we want to place that here into a method, okay? And in a method, I say in a method, we don't really want to do methods. We actually want to place this in a library, but we'll get there, okay? We'll get there. First of all, we want to place this into a method because we're going to test it. And if it works in a method, it will work in the library. Guaranteed. Okay, so let's go then email validate. Let's call it email validate. Hit those keys and click create. Okay, so with that, I will then paste my code in here, and I'm going to come back here to my Ajax events. And because it's a field, it's pretty straightforward. Because I'm not actually passing anything, I'm just going to use the field as it is within the form, but essentially we are going to want to pass that data, so we'll get there too. I have now the method that I've just created, and I have here the Ajax event. So here I want to remove the Ajax event, and I want to then call my new method that I've just created. Okay, so here I call it then validate, and open close that, and off we go. Run that. Let's go ahead, and again we're still in debug mode, so we're going to see everything that happens. We're going to have all those script errors, we're going to have any of those issues. Now if I come here again, if I go now sent home, let's see if this one exists. Let's come here, processing, and now true error code, and then it's going to give us all of this message. So valid format is true, MX found false, disposable true. So the MX is not found, and if the MX is not found, it's not really an email address, okay? It's not registered nowhere. So what we want then to happen is that every time, depending on what happens with this email, we want to have that error message, maybe have an error message in the first place, and have that change depending on what the error message is. Okay, so we will get there too. So now that we have then our email validate, we've placed that here in our Ajax event. So we're using here now a PHP method, which is super powerful, by the way. Okay, and with that, I'm going to go a step further now. I'm going to take that away, and then I'm going to come up here and I'm going to go to my internal libraries. Okay, so within my internal libraries, I can move all of my code from my applications because this is something I'm going to reuse, right? So I'll choose here project, and now I will create a reusable piece of code. You can call it that, and a library. And with this library, I can then call it at any time within any application just by adding it. We'll get there too. Okay, so with the internal library, I can then give this a name. So let's call this again email Maileroo _ and validate. Let's call it that. And I can add a description here as well. I don't want to. I'm just going to click save for now. And that will now create my library I can use, and it already has PHP in here. See, it already creates it, and what we need to do then is actually create our function here. Okay. If I go now function, and I'm going to call this function, what did I call this function before? I'm going to give it the same name, and okay, so I need to give it a name now, so I'm going to call it mail check. Open close my brackets, open close my brackets again, and just like that we have a function. We can use function mail check. Okay, so before, you don't, function is the function. Okay, you separate the words. Function, mail check is the name or the library, the function that I now can call within my application. So if I save this, just for the sake of it, come back here now to my form clients where I have this. I still have this saved here, and what I can do is I can delete here the method. So let's do that. And then here within my Ajax events, I'm going to call then here my new mail check. Okay, so that is something I then want to call. So I'm going to call them mail check here. And at the same time, I want to pass, because now I need to pass that data to that library. Okay, it's not inside of this application no more. So I need to pass it. There's no choice there. There are ways of passing data within the application, but not in this case. Okay, so mail check. I'm going to add then the email field here. So that is client _ email. And with that, I am then passing that variable over to my internal library. Now I also need to enable this library, and I have that here in programming, internal libraries. It's just above the methods here. Again, powerful tools. And if I scroll down, because I've now saved this internal library, it is now available within this application. So knowing that this application will validate email addresses, I then just need to check this box, and then I can just call it at any time I want to by using this very simple one line, mail_check, add the email address, whatever it is, whether it's client email, or it doesn't make any difference. I just pass that along as a variable to here my internal libraries, and then in here we essentially process it. Okay, so what we then need to do is add that variable in here. So here I'm going to say then this is then the email address that we are then going to check, right? Because we are then passing a variable from one application to this application. This is the variable. If I need to add more, I can just comma separate them, okay? And I can then take more variables in here. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is that every time that an email is checked, I want to log it. So I'm going to go sc_add log, okay? And then with that, I already then have the very basic, straightforward, super powerful Scriptcase macro to log the occurrence or event. Okay, so whenever this is triggered, it's going to log it for me. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to copy paste this one because it starts to get a bit long from here. So I have here the log here already. So I'm going to say there's an email check on this email address, and here is the email address. So that is what has been passed along. And if I save that now, and then for instance, if I come here to my form clients, run that, it will then trigger that log add. And we can see that in the application in a minute. So if I come here, then here, I'll say project, home, whatever. It doesn't exist anyway. And of course now it's called that function. We're not getting anything displayed now, right? Okay, and that's important. So when you test these functions, these APIs, whatever it is, test them within the application, test them within a blank. Don't place them straight in your internal library. It won't work. Okay, you're not going to see your debug information. You're going to be missing data. You're going to hate it. It's going to be awful. Okay, so test it within your applications, get it all working, and then move it. Okay, and then with the move, you will need to test again. Okay, so with that, we can actually come here to our database, and I have here the SC log. Now, if I did not have this log table, if I did not have a log set up, then it would more than likely give an error. So if I come here to page 2, and I did not have log created here, I should mention that, okay? And then here we have some of the emails that were queued. So, as I said, within this project, we've just created this project. I've not created the logging system yet. Okay, so I now need to create the log system that I'm going to use for this. So I'll just call it sample. And then with that, every time I log something, it will log it. So it's default schema. I'll say yes. Let's just default all of that. Save. Some tables should be created. Okay, yes, they already exist. Close. I know it exists, and I'll add all these applications there by default. Okay, so you can select here if you want to capture those events for those applications. I do. Okay, so I'll save, close that. And then again, what I can actually do now here from the module is also create the application. Okay, but here I have this window open still. I just need to go back. Okay, and then go back, I can create the application log. I'm always doing that, it's force of habit, you know. And then here, I just generate the application, create. It's using security as well straight away. So you may want to disable the security in this application. To do that, I'm showing you so many things in today's video. Wow. Okay, so security, and then just disable it. Now I can run this log, okay? And then of course, during those testing phases, I can then go ahead and check it. So if I now go form clients again, run, and now within this, I can go ahead, check this email again, project_home this time, go like so. Okay, let's check our log, run our log, and then of course we could check the database again. And then within our log, let's go to the end, and we have just accesses here so far. We're not at the end, that's why. There is our check, look. Email check result. The email address is valid. Check. The email address has been checked. Okay, so that's not even the address we're checking here, is it? So we need to, of course, adjust here our code. Okay, so for our form clients, once we pass that on, then we are able here to create our function some more. So yes, I had the log there. If you want to remove that, I'll just comment that out because it seems like it's not working right now with this log, but it will do by the time we finish. Okay, so let me then prepare first of all here our curl script. So I have here my API key. I have here the API key that I'm using for this validation, as well as then the email address in my parameters in the options here. And then for the settings, I have here the curl options. Now, you may recognize already I'm using the Scriptcase macro, SC web service. Okay, so what's happening here? We want to then assume our response here, and of course I could keep echoing it, and it is echoed here within the code, and you may just want to comment that out because we have that here and it's just going to be processed anyway. So what's going on? We are actually echoing all the way here. I'm just going to actually go ahead and paste all of the code to save a bit of time. Okay, now here within our response, we capture that. And you see here, I'm echoing it throughout the code because, of course, it was during the development of this. So I was echoing the response and then seeing how I can then assign the response array, well, assign it to an array, which is what we did here first of all. Okay, so we take our response, we use JSON decode, assign it to an array, and then within our array, we can then fetch or select those datas that we want to use. So we have here the array success value, data email, data valid format, data mx found, data disposable, data free. Okay, and then depending on the response, it will display the message that we have here defined. So we have here a message, a type, as well as a title. Okay, so we can say the title is empty, or the email is empty in this case. The type is a warning, and then we have here a message. So invalid or empty email address provided. Okay, MX record not found. Valid but disposable email. Valid free. Valid paid. Then displayed, and at the bottom here we then take that message, okay, and even if it's an error message, we'll take that message too, and then we will use the SC alert macro and display it within our application. Now you see at the end here we have then the second log entry we're actually seeing there just now. So this is then the SC log email check result that we were seeing here. That's what we're seeing in the grid here. The email check and then the email check result. They're both here within our internal library. Okay, so email check result, and then up here we had then the SC log email check. So we're logging the initial request, and then we're also logging the result. Okay, so if I go ahead and save that, and come back here to the form clients, and go run again, now we're going to end up with a slightly different story. So here, let's go home, and let's say portal home, that would do. And we're processing, and there we have valid paid email accounts, because that is, of course, one of those error messages or one of those return messages that we have in here. Valid but disposable valid paid account. So meaning that this is in fact a valid domain. Okay, this is a valid domain, and it is of course a paid domain, and the email account more than likely exists, maybe not david.smith, but at portalhome.com does. And of course, as some of you may know, there is this catch-all functionality where we can just define any email address and bang, 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 you get all of them. So I think that is our first internal library added here for our form clients. Now to add this here to our form companies, come here to Ajax events, choose then here the company email. Now that we've added that into our library, choose on change, come back to the create event, and there is our form companies done and dusted. Look at that. I didn't even have to touch a key. Well, I did 2 keys. Okay, so with that, we then also need to enable this library, don't forget. So programming, internal libraries, and Maileroo. Now, if I uncheck this and run this application, just so you see, you will receive an error message, okay? It will tell you. So if I come here, I say Scriptcase by Santa Claus. Spell it correctly. Okay, Santa Claus. There we go. And out of there, oh, fatal error. Uncaught call to undefined function. It means you did not check this box. Okay, so check that box. Let me come here to application, settings, and I'm going to remove the SQL error and the AJAX error output. Why? Because the form's finished. It's finished. There's no errors. It should be working all the time. Yeah, just disable them. Okay, so Jamie portal home, let's call it that. And there is no such email, invalid or empty email address provided. Okay, and of course you can change those alerts and everything else just as you please. And that is all available within this single library with a few lines of code. That's it. Done and dusted. It was pretty straightforward. And I think the email validation probably only took me 2, maybe 3 hours to put together, like this as well, all in all. Okay, so with that, pretty straightforward. And of course, you as a member, you've got this for free. Yes, you may not have it yet. I have to say that, okay? It's not going to be available for you yet. I'm sorry. There is a new membership platform coming. Maybe you saw it in the previous video. Maybe you didn't. Watch the previous video. And don't forget to get your Jamie free code and use the link in the description to sign up for Maileroo in the first place. And don't forget to watch the next video where we continue with this video. And we will, of course, add the email sending, the transactional emails within another library so that we can reuse it throughout our applications. So we will continue with these 2 forms that we have. We may even add some functionality into the grids if there's anything you'd like in another video, because I think I would have recorded this one already. Okay, so with that, we have our log. We have a few applications here. I'm going to delete the company's new because we just created that there to test out that error there, remember? And that's done. We have here our blank transaction and validation tests, as well as then our grid and forms. We will continue within the next video where we will be adding another library and of course testing out this time the email sending and customizing that as well a little, and preparing it for you guys so you can actually use it, download it, replicate it, copy it. Okay, it's there for you, for members, and for non-members I will be making a special version of this available which you can then download, set up yourself on your own production environment if you like, or your own, and of course give it a go. See what Scriptcase is really all about. I'll add maybe some other functionality in there. We'll see as we go along. So until then, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget, get that code and the link in the description, and I'll catch you in the next video. So thank you very much for watching, and until then.